Hello, EJK here, and this is part 2 between INnoVation and Flash. This part is going to identify important late game concepts such as army compositions and army compositions and army compositions. We're going to see the dynamics of different types of army and why they reign supreme, when they reign supreme, and how they can end up falling apart as well. So, with both players gearing up towards the late game, Flash has already started his Raven production at about the 16-minute mark. Very important to note. We also see that only INnoVation has Blue Flame, so Flash is very prioritized on spending his gas as efficiently as possible. This was not that great of a engage by him. INnoVation's reinforcement Vikings doing a great job at turning the tide of the battle. But it's alright because Flash, that was an okay-ish trade for Flash. I would say that not nearly as cost-effective his way compared to INnoVation's way. INnoVation definitely came out a little bit more favorably from that. So with his faster 4th command center and already 2 Ravens and 2 Vikings on the way, Flash is going into this next stage of the game in a very dominating fashion, even though supplies do not say the same story. Flash has already developed a very high Raven count. He's scanning to check if INnoVation is switching into Sky Air himself. He is not. And what we see here is Flash has finally revealed that he has gone for a very faster air switch. But INnoVation can't really do anything at this point. Now, one thing that he can do is to take more expansions than Flash. The cost efficiency of the Sky Army has a downfall in where it's not as mobile as a ground mech army, and so it's harder to deny expansions and to do a lot of damage. We see Flash eventually use these Ravens towards expending the energy in favor of killing things, which in the long run is very cost efficient, like trading like 200 energy, or well, like 300 energy for 2 siege tanks. You're eventually going to win the war of attrition. But this goes a little bit differently, and I have a very good explanation why. Flash doesn't just outright win. Right now, what we're seeing is kind of like in a Villa game, where he just gets a lot of Ravens and he gets a lot of Vikings. And then he just kind of seemingly has this unbeatable unit composition that just does not die. And we see here, Flash is starting to use his PDDs to effect. INnoVation's first 2 Ravens have just started, whereas Flash has just started to increase his Raven output to like 3 to 4 Ravens. I'm not sure if one of the starports was a reactor or not, but essentially Flash has 10 Ravens compared to 0 of INnoVation, and he now has the superior air army composition. It's pretty safe to say that. Now, what we see happen here, and for the next couple minutes of the game, is just using the PDD, or using the Raven energy to just take out expensive siege tanks, and siege tanks, not Vikings, not Thors. Thors can run away, Vikings can run away, but sieged up tanks cannot run away. They are slow moving targets of 125 gas and 125 minerals. So it's a fair trade for a good amount of energy. For the efficiency of the energy and how efficient that makes this army, like a Raven Viking army with very little energy is not a very scary army. I think there's a fine line between how much energy you can use as opposed to how much energy you need to save up to be able to win big head-on engagements as well. All of these trades, I think, have been very efficient for Flash, because ever since he's gotten this very high, scanning for the sky transition once again, and he sees the sky transition. But I think everything has gone pretty well for Flash, trading mainly energy for siege tanks of his opponent. And now he's just adding his 4th and 5th factory, by the way, after he's on 5 bases. So he's really prioritized getting Vikings and Ravens, and he's successfully done that in the fact that he is up like 4 Ravens and 4 Vikings right now. He also has the Raven energy upgrade, or I'm not even sure if that's the energy upgrade or the thing that makes... I think it's the energy upgrade, because otherwise he would get the other thing if he was going to use PDDs and auto turrets more. But okay, so that much energy to kill 4 siege tanks. We have to ask ourselves this question. So that was 2, 4, 6, 800 Seeker missiles times 75. So that's 8 times 75, 150, 190, I believe. That's 100 and... No, that's 1900 energy. Wait. 7? Crap. 8 times 75. 7 times 8 is 560. And then... Oh, so I think it's just only around 600 energy, actually. Let's just estimate it. And it's about 600 energy. He has 14 Ravens. So the total energy that his army can have is about 2800. So using 600 energy out of the possible 2800 that he has, and he's regaining 14 energy for every second, essentially. So he'll... in a couple minutes, he will have all of his energy back. But in a couple minutes, his opponent could also use that time to take a new base, to attack while the army is weaker. And by that, I mean not having enough energy to deal with the other opponent's enemy. Right now, we see Flash. He's in a very dominant position right here because he has a lot of siege tanks. He also has a lot of Ravens as well. His opponent can't just throw down like 500 Seeker missiles to thin out the siege tank count, whereas Flash can, and he's slowly taking these good trades. However, he's just taking good trades. He's looking to win a war of attrition rather than to take any specific area of the map and then do a big push forward or anything like that. One thing to note is that as long as he has a very high siege tank count, this very big Raven Viking ball seems unstoppable because he has 16 siege tanks behind him. However, throughout the coming minutes, the siege tank count's going to be slowly thinned out, and we see as soon as his siege tank count thins out, INnoVation's ground army all of a sudden gets extremely powerful to the point where Flash is struggling to hold on. And even though he has a very large energy bank with his Ravens, he's not going to have enough energy to be able to stop the incoming push, the inevitable push. Ooh, those doing a very good job is INnoVation by eliminating those siege tanks very cost efficiently. Both players are on even basis, so cost efficiency is very important. But we see there, that was like 5 more Hunter Seeker missiles, so that's like 400 energy equivalent that Flash just burnt on a couple siege tanks. And it's not making his Ravens very, like, none of his Ravens have enough energy for a point defense drone. So that's 16 Ravens that are less than 100 energy. And probably only a handful have enough for Hunter Seeker missile right now. So at this point, Flash's army is starting to get very weak. Also, coupled with the fact that his siege tank count isn't very high, he lost 5 siege tanks and he hasn't replenished them quite yet. He has a very large Viking count though. So that just means that, and I do think he overmade Vikings, because Vikings end up stacking against each other, but it basically means that he shouldn't make any more Vikings. He has air control if he takes a direct engagement against his opponent. But against Raven Viking, the only time you should ever take an engagement is if your opponent eats a Hunter Seeker missile or something like that. Otherwise, it's just a lot wiser to sit back and kind of wait. Shit. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I just realized I haven't eaten anything yet. Well, the last time I ate was like 8 hours ago, so I need to eat something. Oh yeah, so alright, so one problem I have against Flash's play here is that even though both players are even on bases, the unit composition tells a different story. Flash has 14 additional Vikings, that's 28 supply, that could have been in siege tanks, that could have been in Ravens. He still has a very large Raven count, but we're going to start to see what this Raven count can actually do when they don't have enough siege tanks to back them up. And Flash trying to retreat here, he just doesn't have enough siege tanks to be able to defend against a full-on ground assault. He has too much air. And INnoVation just added 3 additional factors as well. So his plan right now isn't to combat Flash's air superiority with all of these Ravens. It is instead to do a very big ground assault and do a very big switch to a big ground army and reinforce that very fast so that Flash's Ravens no longer have enough energy to continuously chip away at his army. So right now, a lot of positioning is going underway. INnoVation is splitting up different parts of his army. He's trying to create a little concave, a little flanking area so that he can get a good engagement against Flash's army. That's what all of these scans are for. And now we see on the minimap his army is slowly moving into position. There's a crap ton of Vikings, oh my gosh. But yeah, so siege tanks are great, but only after they hit a critical number. Before they hit that critical number, they can get overwhelmed fairly easily, and that's what we're going to see here. So although Flash has a lot of Hunter Seeker missiles, he no longer has a very high siege tank count to be able to stop this kind of an attack from happening. Along with the fact that his siege tanks were all split up as well, so that the splash damage wasn't as effective as opposed to having all of the siege tanks bunched up and not as concentrated. And we see all of those point defense drones, or not that, Hunter Seeker missiles go down on his army, and Flash is able to do a decent job against INnoVation's army, keeping his Raven count, for the most part, pretty alive. He has a much higher Raven count than his opponent. But what happens here in the remax is that INnoVation is no longer wanting to remax on Vikings and Ravens, whereas Flash is. And instead, INnoVation is going to be remaxing on pretty much a pure ground army. And all of these Ravens, they did use up a significant amount of energy to keep Flash alive from that engagement. So although Flash took a very good fight in the beginning, like at his choke area, this is soon to be neutralized because of the fact that he doesn't really have a lot of Raven energy left in his army. So that makes his army significantly weaker the less energy he has. So INnoVation might have lost that fight, but he expended a lot of energy from those Ravens, making Flash's overall air army less scary. And he also has an economic advantage as well, bordering on 4, 5, 6, 7 bases, whereas Flash is struggling to take his 7th base as well. One of the benefits of having a more mobile mech ground army is that you can split sections of units off to harass expansions. As we see here, killing this expansion, denying that expansion over there, and also sending a Hellion run-by over here to this expansion as well. Flash's economy is kind of in shambles. Now here we see a counterattack going on. Again, a lot of Hunter Seeker missiles just being used there, and to very little effect. 300 seeker missiles. They're great to kill off a siege tank or two, but in actually defending something, they only weak. If they don't kill, then they don't really do a good job of like cleaning stuff up. You still have to have an army around to clean it up. We see here Flash taking a very awful engagement because of his army composition, basically. He doesn't have a lot of tanks. He has no Thors. And I'm just going to back up a little bit because I'm also pretty sure, like all of his Ravens, he has 15 Ravens right now. I believe they clumped up and some Thors shot him. Yeah, he's at 13 now, and then, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, and now he's at 6. So yeah, those two Thors just kind of took out, like, 5 more Ravens. So Flash just lost 10 Ravens in this assault as well. Now, 10 Ravens is definitely more expensive than anything that his opponent has. In terms of building, in terms of gas and minerals, just in general, losing a very big chunk of what... Like, if Flash kept those Ravens alive, he could have backed off, he could have still had a commanding sky army and been in an okay position. But he doesn't have the superior economy anymore. It's 35 minutes into the game, so there's only like 1 to 2 bases mining max for Flash, whereas INnoVation has 3 fresh ones. So INnoVation's going to be able to power ahead very, very easily. Flash just kind of, yeah, he just doesn't have any energy for these Ravens, and now we see all of a sudden these Ravens are no longer scary when they have no energy. They're just floating jackpots that you can hit. Flash is transitioning into Banshees now because he no longer needs Vikings. He no longer needs Ravens. He just needs siege tanks, and he wants to make Banshees as well to kind of scrape together a large enough army to kill his opponent and kind of slowly push forward with his air count. However, Banshees are very easily countered by Thors. A Thor only takes about 3 shots to kill a Banshee, and Banshees take 1,000,000 shots to kill Thors because Banshees do like no damage to Thors. What's going on right now is we see Flash really struggling to find areas to do economic damage to INnoVation. Flash has no way to slow down INnoVation's economy at this point. Flash also has no economy of his own. His bank has been expended, and he has somewhat of a good army, but because he lost so many of those Ravens in the last fight, in the last major engagement, he doesn't really have much to his name, and INnoVation has a very monstrous economy right now. And as a result, he's able to produce like 5 siege tanks, 5 Hellions, and then or 7 Vikings if he wants at the same time. We see Flash still producing Banshees, but I don't think he actually knew the true extent of INnoVation's economy. He does 2 scans to see if there's like hidden base over there or not, and he also sees this base. And I think he sees it for the first time as well, and that base has almost been mined out. And we have no answer for Flash against INnoVation's muling base. So INnoVation is pretty much just able to pump out a ridiculous amount of economy, and he's winning the war of attrition because he took 1 good engagement against Flash, and he has also had a healthier mining rate than Flash, even though both players have been on the same base count for a very long time now. Or similar base count. INnoVation's been ahead for a little bit of the game, I would say. Like, he's been faster to establish his expansions, and he also did a good job of denying Flash's expansions from fully mining as well. Now we see here more Hunter-Seeker missiles needing to be used. However, INnoVation simply backs out from them, and that's a lot of energy that's all of a sudden wasted. And one reason why INnoVation didn't need to siege up and Flash did, and he needed to throw down those Hunter-Seeker missiles to be effective, was because of the tank count. With only 7 siege tanks, this is not enough siege tanks to be able to do anything. You can get rolled over by a ground army. You can get crapped on by a couple Thors. Like, Thors really do a seriously good amount of damage against tanks if you don't have enough to like 1 to 2 shot them before they start getting up and mowing down your tanks. And that I really like the Thors here from INnoVation. It just, when you're going for a ground-based mech army, it gives you a lot more firing power, and it also provides you a safe anti-air counter against Banshees, because sometimes you aren't able to fully get air superiority against your opponent if their economy, or if your economies are similar. However, they're not. In this case, INnoVation has a lot more mining than Flash, and that's why he's starting to creep up ahead in supply in army value. And he just has a lot more options to work with right now. And we see here that these unit compositions throughout the game have changed significantly, going from Viking Raven versus Viking Raven primarily to more ground-based Remax, because once you eliminate the siege tanks and or the Vikings, you either have a choice to start up reproducing siege tanks or reproducing more of your air army. Rip Flash. But you have, okay, so you have the choice when you are remaxing to remax on more ground units or on more air units. You don't just have to remax into an air army, because we saw here INnoVation's remax into a ground army was able to, through multiple waves, kind of defeat Flash's ultimate Viking Raven force, because Flash got overextended and he ran out of energy on his Ravens, and then he lost all of his Ravens as well, because they were just kind of sitting around doing nothing with no energy, low health, just taking random shots, and that, not good, not good. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I personally thought it was a really great macro game, something that we can all learn from. These kinds of games don't come as often as I'd like them to come around. If you guys have any questions or about things that I missed, or about recent videos that you might want me to go over, or builds or anything, just leave a comment and I will get to it ASAP. Peace out, guys.